Hello, and welcome to Self-Care is Sexy. My name is Chris, and I'll be your host. We're a podcast that's here to generate and share self-care ideas with each other. Our last episode was all about self-worth. I gave you some reasons why it's really important for you to know how to generate your own self-worth from within, as well as some tangible ideas and examples on how to actually do that. So if self-worth is something that you struggle with, or you're just looking for ways to change how you think about yourself, that's a great episode to check out. You can find this podcast pretty much anywhere just by Googling Self-Care is Sexy. You can also find us on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, SoundCloud, Amazon, Spreaker, Stitcher, Podbean, PodNation, really anywhere you get your podcasts from. I want to give you a quick preview of what to expect from today's show. So today, I'm going to be talking about the minimum baseline, what that is, how it pertains to self-care, and how we actually create one so that you can see some results in your life from doing this self-care and from taking care of yourself. But first, a few quick housekeeping notes. Okay, so today I want to talk about a minimum baseline and what that is and what it has to do with self-care. But first, if you don't know me in person or we've not hung out in this past year, I want to take the moment to just kind of reintroduce myself to everyone and just give you a little bit of my story when it comes to my own self-care. I think it's important that you connect with the sources of information, especially when it comes to advice on taking care of yourself and something so important as self-care. So me personally, again, my name is Chris. I'm the host of this podcast. There's plenty of episodes that you can go check out if you want to hear more about my story. But I just want to share today that my self-care journey has definitely evolved over time, and it has certainly accelerated this last year after COVID and just kind of this whole shift in our reality. And self-care has become so much more of a priority than it ever has been. And it's really been changing my life. And recently, I went through a pretty big life lesson as a result of self-care and just self-reflection and kind of doing all of that work that we talk about on this show. And if you are listening to me and you're like, I can't identify with that. I don't know what my big life lesson is. I just want to share with you that you absolutely have a lesson to learn. And if you're not sure what it is, it's time to really get deep and reflect and look at your life and find that lesson, because you are here to learn something. Like, yes, the human experience is just all about like experiencing and creating and having fun and all of that, but there is a lesson to be learned, and not just one. But for me personally, I have kind of been stuck on the one lesson my entire life. And this past year, with self-care being the priority, I finally learned the lesson, and I'm ready to move on. And I want to share that with you as we go through today's show, because if you're struggling with, repeating the same patterns over and over, or having to deal with the same problem or stressors or challenges, this is a really good episode for you to really take it to heart and apply it and watch how it's going to immediately, like within days, this minimum baseline stuff will absolutely change your life. And just real quickly, I'm not going to go on too long. Like I said, you can always find other episodes on my specific story, how the podcast got started, just about the journey in general, what I've learned and all of that. But I just want to share with you that what self-care has taught me is it's taught me how to look at myself differently, how to present myself differently, how to be more authentic because I treat myself differently. And it has completely changed my life, making self-care that priority. I used to be the kind of person that really cared what everybody else thought and would run myself ragged, trying so desperately to make everyone around me happy and satisfied and dig into their problems, not realizing that all of that was masking and avoiding my own work. And so through COVID and this last couple of years, being sort of almost forced to make self-care the priority, I can promise you, if we've not hung out in the last year, I'm a completely different person, and it's all because of self-care. So, with that said, I want to help give you some tools on how you can get there too, especially this time of year. The holiday season, the winter is upon us, and if you struggle with depression or anxiety or any neurodivergence, this is a very difficult time of year. And so I want to give you a very tangible, real practice that can actually help you right now without having to, get expensive therapy or spend a lot of money, because there are a lot of really good ways that you can get self-care by purchasing things. Like it's dry out, you might need a humidifier with like some essential oils. That would be a really good self-care idea right now. It's getting much darker earlier, so maybe one of those sad lamps, the seasonal disorder lamps, like maybe that's a great self-care tip for you. But if you're not in the world of having a bunch of money to throw at yourself for self-care, I want you to listen to today's show and really apply what I'm teaching, because I learned this lesson about a year ago, like almost a year and a half ago. And at first it was a little difficult for me to implement, especially not being a very, structured person in general. But I did implement it, and I have been practicing it. And I promise you, this is the self-care life hack that you're looking for. And that life hack is called the minimum baseline. And really, the short answer is a minimum baseline is a plan that you're going to create that basically looks at the worst possible day you could ever have and says, no matter what's happening that day, what are the minimum things I will absolutely do? So we're talking about routine. We're talking about things that you're saying are the bare minimum that you would like to accomplish every day in order to ensure that you are living a fulfilled, a happy, a positive, a good life. And when you're thinking about what your minimum baseline is, I want you to really think about the worst possible day, right? Like grandma dies, or the car won't start, or you got fired, or the love of your life decides to drop you like a hot potato for no reason with no explanation. Like, think of that day. The reason I want you to start from that place is because on your worst possible day, what is the minimum amount of things that you will do for your own self-care and your own well-being? Because I think a lot of us get wrapped up in this whole idea that we have to do everything all the time, even when it comes to taking care of ourselves. And the truth is, and this is the real life hack, friends, is that you don't have to do everything all the time to get the results you're looking for. What you're looking for are small incremental changes that build upon themselves. And so a minimum baseline is what are the minimum things you're going to do even on your worst day for self-care. Now, making that list or coming up with those ideas might seem daunting. I'm going to make it real easy for you. You're only going to come up with number one. The number one thing that you will absolutely do for yourself, no matter what happens, that is your minimum baseline. Currently, I've been doing this for about a year. I'm up to 4. I started out with 1 because that was doable for me at the time. And I've built on that one practice every day. Now, am I perfect? Abso-fucking-lutely not. I am human. Things happen. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to be better. So how it works is you're going to come up with that number one thing that you're going to do every day for self-care, no matter what. You're going to write it down, and you can use an app like me. I use what's called the Habit app. You can look up on the interwebs and find it. I will post a link to the show notes with that app that I use. And it's a customizable app that just lets you keep track of the habits you want to create. It's pre-programmed with like water, walking, sleep, reading. I can't remember. There's a bunch of pre-programmed things, but you can customize this app for whatever you need. And it literally takes maybe a minute to set it up. So I started out customizing it with one thing I wanted to accomplish every single day, no matter if shit hit the fan or it was the worst day ever, or hell, if I win the lotto and have the best day ever. No matter the circumstance, I wanted to accomplish that one goal every single day. And for me, the very first thing I started with was a minimum baseline of drinking 64 ounces of water every day. Now that sounds easy, right? A lot of you might be saying, Chris, like, wow, woo, real big life hack you got going there. Just drink 64 ounces of water every day. Well, here's the deal. Here's what makes the minimum baseline a life hack and not just something you do. Because there's this element of tracking it, of consistently doing it and building upon the success. A year ago, that was really challenging for me to get 64 ounces of water in every day, no matter what. I mean, hell, it's still challenging. There are still some days where at the end of the day, like you'll see the app like will keep track and you're on a streak, and I'm very competitive. So I'm like, I don't want to lose my streak. So I'll literally be sitting there at the end of the day, like trying to suck down another 40 ounces of water that I forgot to drink throughout the day. But the life hack or the big exciting part of this is that as you build that habit, it becomes habit. It becomes routine. That minimum baseline becomes something that you're no longer conscientiously trying to achieve, but that your brain just stores in the back of its mind of like, okay, that's something we just do. And that's why you want to start small. You don't want to have 5 or 6 things that you consider your minimum baseline at the beginning. Now, like I said, I've been doing it for a year, and I have only 4 things on my list that are considered my minimum baseline. And when I get to my own personal achievement of making those 4 things my self-care priority, no matter what, for 30 days or more in a row without missing one, then I will know, and I will have that feeling of accomplishment that those are now automatic habits. And I can either add a new one or I can take it off the list altogether, trusting myself that I know it is now a habit. Now, how creating a minimum baseline helps you with self-care is, one, it really focuses you, which a lot of us, when we talk about why we can't get self-care in, why we don't have time, a lot of it comes down to focus, right? You wake up, your feet hit the ground, and you're going until you crash in bed later after God knows what's happened to you throughout the day. And a lot of times, having these habit trackers, having these systems in place gives you a type of focus on yourself that you just don't automatically have. Now, if you know anyone in your life who's really good at taking care of themselves, you can see that it's an automatic habit. They have routines and systems in place. You can tell by the way that they talk, communicate to other people, how they act and behave, that their self-care is a non-negotiable. And if that's something that doesn't come naturally to you, you definitely want to put some things in place that are going to help that become natural to you. Because what it does having this minimum baseline is one, it helps to remind you that you are taking care of yourself. It gives you that actual visualization, that actual tracking method to see like, okay, I've been drinking my water all week. I've met my minimum baseline all week long. I am taking care of myself. I am listening to my body's needs. I am doing the bare minimum that I need to do to know that I'm doing self-care. Because we get lost in the sauce